Hello, my name's Locke, and welcome to my ongoing series of little factory tours within Satisfactory. Satisfactory is a game where you build machines to let you have stuff to build more machines so you can build more machines and more stuff. With the ultimate goal being that you need to supply materials to a space elevator. And that space elevator takes the materials into space, where we don't know what happens to them. Storyline in this game is not quite complete yet, but that's how we go. So in this episode, I'm going to go over how I started off in my coal area and explain how I do fluid, because fluid in this game is a bit weird and has changed slightly over time. But I'll go through the basics of what's there. Unlike other ones, I'm going to try and do all this on foot for you. So this will be as I did originally. So I remember there being quite a lot of enemies here when I first came, and I needed to run this power cable because I knew I was going to build a power plant here. And I didn't have a hypertube or anything, so I walked from my base over to here, placing these power poles, which now run all the way back across, and then started work on this area. So the way coal power plants work when you've unlocked them is, as the name suggests, they burn coal to make power. They burn quite a lot of coal, 15 per minute, so it's not too bad. You can get quite a lot of coal out of a single burner. And they also require water, which is the first time you'll deal with fluid in this game. The big advantage of coal power plants is that it's 75 megawatts without you having to manually feed them. So per coal power plant, you are able to generate almost as much power as two of the biofuel burners we were looking at earlier, and they're automatically fed, so you don't have to go around picking these things, running back to your bio burners, filling them back up, because until you get coal done, that's what you have to do. So the other thing you need is coal vein, normal coal vein. You can manually mine it as we did with the other bits. You can place down an auto miner. You can do the little tab menu twitch so that you get it stuck and it will keep mining so long as you're looking at the coal, even though I'm not holding E anymore. But basically you want to stick down a miner. I've got a Mark II miner which works twice as fast as a Mark I miner. To start with, I don't think you've got these when you do coal, but they just work at double the rate. So for a normal vein you can have 60 coal per minute until you get a miner, and then you get from 60 it doubles it up to 120 per minute. I will do my little slidey glitch, so if you're running and you crouch and then immediately jump, you can go quite a long way. In this game, it's a way of moving slightly faster than normal. This is walking, running with a shift key, slide and then jump quicker. The other fun thing you can do is slide under things. So if you're running, you can slide under stuff. If you're not running, just duck and walk into it. Voicing. This thing that seems to try and dance on my back, making weird noises, is what some people call a bean or a mysterious creature. That hostile activity warning is not from him. That must mean there's something else there. Yeah, you. This thing. These are angry and also quite confused. Okay. So this area, it's got resources in it. Anywhere with resources in it tends to have enemies guarding those resources. That's just how the game works. But I've shown you where I got coal and ran a belt. The next thing you need is water, and as you probably worked out, water comes from lakes. Lakes filled with H2O. You need slightly deep water, so you can put a pump down. This water extractor is glitching into the ground, but it doesn't matter, it doesn't fill up with salt. If you want them to look nicer, then you need deeper water so you can see their filter parts aren't overfilling. And I will now need to swim out of here. There's ladders built into these, so that I can oh dear. Oh dear, I did. So I can show you how I did it. So if you just place them in the water, you can do, and I think the first ones I placed were over here, because there is a rock outcrop here. So from this rock you can bring up a thing, wave it around in the water, and when it turns blue, you can place it. That means the water is deep enough and it's not clipping. If you hold down control, you can align these with others. You see it sort of snaps to next to those, like a mouse would spin them, things like that. So if you want to lay things out neatly, that is how you would do it. But you place a water extractor, and that gets you water when it's powered. Now, this is where you get into a bit of a a chicken and egg scenario, or how do you bootstrap things? So these water extractors need some power to run. I've underclocked this one. I'll explain why I'm underclocking this later. They give you 120 water per minute by default. Can I build one? Yeah, I can build one and show you. So I'll show you when I have it underclocked. Do a lot of swimming, whether you want to or not. So here's a water extractor. This one hasn't been messed around with. I haven't underclocked it. It's not connected. So by default, they need 20 megawatts of power, and they will produce 120 water without any overclocking or underclocking. They have a flow rate, a small water buffer on themselves, and they will output at most 600 meters cubed of water per minute. Cubic meters of water. I can always forget which way I'm supposed to say these. Cubic meters of water? A cube, 1 meter by 1 meter, 1 meter. As part of that, you also have pipes. Pipes are how you connect things, and Mark 1 pipes have a max flow rate of 300. So that's less than these two. So you cannot connect too many of these up to a pipe. I've got this one set to 90 a minute because if you underclock things, it saves power and it works out, and the math on these means that underclocking is helpful. So looking at the power plant, you can see this uses 45 meters per minute. Power plant is running at 100%, so it's the default. So 45 meters per minute of water, and I can run a slightly underclocked plant at 90. So for every one of these, I can have 2 plants. That's 1 plant, 1 pump, making 90, which uses 12.6 megawatts of power, and I can run 2 of these coal generators. So that's 150 megawatts produced, less the 12.6, so that's quite easily 105 power on top that I get from this. There's a net power boost. It's very important, it's net, or else it'd be a waste. I spend all my time with my coal generators running my pumps to run my coal generators. It gets you spare power. 45 per minute, so on a single Mark 1 pipe, I can have quite a lot of these if I want. 300 divided by 45 is 6.666, so it's easy to have 6 power plants on a single pipe. However, it's not so easy to have that many pumps. So for my basic setup when I began, I put down 2 water extractors, and then I can build 4 coal plants. 4 coal plants each need 15 per minute, that is 60 per minute coal together, and the Mark 1 conveyor belts that you get in this game, if I go into logistics and Mark 1, oops, look at the Mark 1 thing, you'll see on the right hand side it says it transports up to 60 resources per minute. So with a Mark 1 belt you can run 4 coal generators, and 4 coal generators need 2 water pumps, so that's why I built them in a set like this. It's pretty simple. You built in the coal from wherever you got it. You'll have splitters by this point, so you can just do what people call basic split. So this coal comes in, you get 60 coming in here. At the beginning when it splits, you'll get a third of 60 on each, so that's 20, 20 and 20. 20 is more than this uses, so its 15 per minute consumption would be achieved, and it will build up 5 extra per minute, and eventually it'll hit 100 coal per minute of filling out its storage. So initially there's only 20 coal coming down here, which is being split in half between these 2 generators, which isn't enough to keep them running. They will each only get 10 per minute rather than the 15 they need. However, once these first ones have filled up, they are only going to demand 15 per minute, so that's 15 going left, 15 going right, which leaves 30 per minute coming down here to get split evenly, and then that achieves the 15 per minute that this does. So overall, once it's had time to build up its reserves, everything is satisfied. And that means I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 generators running at 75 per minute, which is 150 from that side, 150 from that side, 300 megawatts of power in total from this set of generators. That's a lot more than you get from a biomass burner. I would need 10 biomass burners running constantly in order to make that same amount of power. And it would take me quite a lot of time to build the biomass, harvest the biomass, feed the generators per hand. This coal generator is now mandatory. However, you probably need to use biomass generators at the start to get this going, because we said that to get this running you need water, and to get the water you need to power the pump. To get the coal you need to power the miner. So in order to run 2 pumps and a miner, if I get somewhere where I'm not being attacked, go somewhere out the way where it's quiet. To run 2 pumps and a miner, you will need to deal with the guy that's just chasing you around all day, because he's not going to leave you alone. Early on these things are terrifying, but later on you get a better weapon, you get a better clothing, it helps. So we will have a Mark 1 miner. Belts don't use any power, that's good, so we need production of a Mark 1 miner, which uses 5 megawatts. On the right you can see it says it uses 5 megawatts, and then we need 2 water extractors, they each use 20. So that's 45 megawatts of power we need just to start up this system. If we look at power, that means we will need 2 biomass burners running in order to support this, because they only make 30. If you try and run this off a single one, it will cause the power to trip out. I don't want to simulate that for you, because starting a base back up when you've tripped power is a pain. However, you get a switch in here and you can come up to these and restart them. Another one of you guys. We're everywhere! So when I built this, I got rid of all these enemies, and when you've got powered structures, you get enemies. However, notice it powered structures, and if you get a power failure, that turns the structures off, which would not be good. Can I simulate stuff? If I go to here, I'm not sure I want to do this. This is my main line out of here, so if I do that, I've now split my network, so see this massive drop where I've got quite a bit of production here, but not much consumption. And if I check this other pole over here, that's connected to the other network, which is also okay. Okay, cool, so I could try and crash just the coal network to show you what happens. So, this smaller network now has a consumption of 400 megawatts and a production and capacity of 2,700. There's no variable load on this network, that's just what it does. Expand this is the battery tab. If you've got batteries, they work as a temporary storage. See, I do have some charge on this network, but they're not charging anymore because they're full. So it'll run on batteries for quite a while. How can I crash a small bit of the network and show you? Maybe if I just do that. So now, if I look at this network, there is no power supply to this section because it's all just pumps. It's just one. This would need 167 power. So if I temporarily make a biomass burner for you, and I wire it up to this small mini network, and I give it some biomass, which I'll give it biomass fuel, instantly power shuts off. If I try and turn it on, it starts up from on it and fails. You go to power poles and you get the same thing. I switch the fuse on, no luck, instantly fails. So I can see this network has a potential capacity demand of 167, so for me to be able to turn it back on, I need that 167 power, which would mean building several of the biomass burners. If I connect it back up to the other one now, we'll see that I've got it connected to the bigger grid. There's a step up in demand and supply, but it's all fine and running. It hasn't tripped over, so that's happy. And if I now connect this back to the rest of my grid so that I can export this coal power elsewhere. Good. And now it's part of the bigger grid. And you can see another step where I changed it. It's now part of my global grid. Loads of power, loads of consumption. But that means when you're starting up, either you need to run your power line over to begin with so that you can use your existing biomass burners to boot this, or you need to build some temporary biomass burners down here or some other fuel source to get this going. You could also as well start only one pump and two of these so that you've only got half the demand, and then when they're running you can start the other ones and so on. You have to think about that when you're starting up. It's also the reason why on most of my builds where I've got fluids, certainly those around power supplies and things, I will have at one end or nearby a raised fluid buffer. Fluid buffer works as you would expect. It buffers fluid. It's got a storage of up to 400 in here, and we can see that over time it fills a bit and it drains a bit, and you can see the net run and it goes up and down. The way fluid in this game works is that you've got a thing called head lift. Each of these pumps, when you build them, this building by default has a fluid head lift of 10, which if I look in here it will tell us. Water extractor, default extraction rate 120 and a head lift of 10 meters. That means that from the output of that pipe we can move water up to 10 meters vertically. If you want to know exactly how far 10 meters is in the game, you can do things like getting a 1 meter foundation, and then you can stack 10 of them, and once, now we're in this game, we can have a zoop, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. So if that's roughly in line with the bottom of that, this is how tall 10 meters is in the game, so you can see I can get water up to about that level. And if you really want to be sure about things at long distances, you can extend this off with other zooping, and I can bring that through here. So I can bring in water up to about this level. Note that that isn't all the way to the top of this container, so that's probably why I'm only filling it about a quarter full, because that quarter is probably the maximum head lift from that pump before they give out. So if I want that buffer to be full, I need to build it lower, or I need to give it more head lift. Get rid of all this stuff. Delete and fall, and if I want to delete this stack carefully, I will do that. And note that I'm not quite sure where the head lift's from, whether it's from the middle of that outlet, or the top of it, or the bottom of it, or the bottom of this model, or the top of this model. It's somewhere, and you don't get a reading for head lift. All you can see when you've got just a pipe is that it's flowing, and you can see it's roughly flowing the right way, and that the pipe itself is full. Pipes don't store much water, but they can go full. Now I don't need that top buffer to be full. The reason I have a buffer there is because it smooths things out a little bit on the network, because as water comes in and out, it's pumped up here, it flows into these when it can, and if there's any excess it flows into there. And importantly, if I have a power failure, that means that I stop pumping water out of those generators and everything stops getting supplied. There is no more head lift, this pipe will only be filled by whatever's going on. These do store some water of their own, so they will have a small amount of water in them. But if I want to ensure they're full when there's a power failure so that I can start them up easily, by having this container here, even though it's not full, that's another 130 water most of the time that's available, that will flow down these pipes, and that is enough to fill a couple of these completely if for some reason they're drained. So that's why I try and build it so that my supply is low and it pumps uphill, and somewhere at a high point I have a storage that's higher than the thing that's using it. That's it. Now we can talk about head lift when you're doing things a long way. Note that I've built more and more stuff up. I've got a big stack of pipes here, and then I don't think that there's enough to move this water about, so I've done things like build up pipe. Walk up here. These little stackable towers you can make, those ones. They have ladders at the side. The same is true of all the stackable stuff, and you can mix the stackable stuff. So if I build that and then go into here, there's also stackable conveyors under logistics. Put those on top and they clip together like that, and when you get that far you can have stackable pipelines, which we just saw, and stackable river tubes. So you can make a mixed stack of all sorts of things, but they have all got that ladder running up the side. It's handy for getting up and down like I just did. Go to F, go down, that's 4. I built 4 things. I'm not deleting something random. You can just delete random pipes and things in the background. You do not want to do them. Okay, so we talked about head lift earlier. Each of these is able to do a stackable head lift of 10, and if you remember, 10 takes you to slightly less than the top of them, or about the top of them. To increase head lift, you have a thing called a pipe. And when you build a pipe, put it one way round and it pumps water. Pipes will only snap to pipe. Pumps will only snap to pipes, and you can see that when I place it you get a little icon showing which way it is sending water and that it's sending water up to that next set of pumps. If I push mouse wheel round, I can spin it and the arrows show it's now pumping downhill, which would be bad for my purposes. You want to minimize your use of pumps because every pump you build needs power. It doesn't actually say in here how much power that the pump needs. To do that you have to go into your logistics and look over your pumps, and you can see that it uses 4 megawatts of power to run a pump. So that's quite a bit. You know, it's not a small amount of power. Later on you'll get Mark II pipes and Mark II pumps. They have a higher flow rate, and the Mark II pipe pumps can also provide a greater head lift. 50 meters of head lift from a Mark II pump, but 20 meters of head lift from a Mark I pump. 20 meters is pretty good. It's double what you'd get from a basic one, and it allows you to send water quite a long way up. Nowadays things have got a bit better. You can see there was an icon when I placed it to show you how far things run. You can also open up and see how much head lift an individual pump is providing. So once everything's settled and it's running constantly, the flow rate steady, it settles down and it measures head lift of 5, which you can see is not much of the full head lift this can do. And you can see the flow rates being measured here as well. That's because it's only got to move 5 litres before it hits this pump. And this pump then moves things another 6 metres until it reaches this pump. I have built way too many pumps here because I got tired of doing it. And it was back when I didn't have the option of using this number. In the oldie days you had to measure it by eye, or just look at this and see how far the little arrows got when you clip them on. So that would give you a rough indication of where, if you could see where that blue thing was going. Nowadays the blue thing still works, and you also have the better indication of, you don't just have to sit here and squint at where that goes and see where your pipes are full and go along and go this pipe is full. Further along you check again and go this pipe is empty. You can just see it. So I could probably delete some of these middle pumps and everything would work okay. In fact, just for neatness sake, because I've got one here, I might do that. I don't think I need that pump anymore. And now, having removed that pump, I will go back here and I'll put this extra top pump on, and I should be able to see that this top pump, oops, okay, down here. Top pump is working, and now I can see it says 9 meters of head lift, and that's half its 20, so that's fine. That one pump can run it and get things out. These pumps were needed here because although this was full, it started to stall, and then they provide the head lift to get things further into this lot. And then this head lift goes up here. And as I said, I like to build storage buffers. We go up here, I've built myself some storage buffers. These are outside and inline now, so the water flows in through the storage buffer, which isn't full, but it gives some buffering, and then into here, which is where I started to build my first big power plant. And it's much the same as the other one. You've got a pipeline. Each pipeline can move 300 water per minute, and each of these needs 45 water per minute. So if you want to do the calculation, you know that you can have up to 6 of those per pipe. And along here, counting the chimneys, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 along each side. So I have to use 2 pipes because I can't support one enough. So I use the bottom one to feed the first 5, I use the top pipe to feed the next 5, and I do the same the other side, it's mirrored. And then I need a lot of coal because I've got 10 power plants on each side, so that's 20 power plants in total. Each power plant needs 15. 15 times 10 times 2 is 300 coal per minute. That's quite a lot. However, by this point I've got a Mark II miner, and I can overclock it, and you can see that produces 300 coal per minute. And to carry that I need a Mark IV belt, because Mark IV belts can carry more than Mark I belts. So 300 coal per minute. Right, let's go into our belts. So I've got other options for this now, but I'll take this opportunity to explain overclocking to you in just a second. For logistics, 300 coal per minute. A Mark III belt won't carry it. You need a Mark IV belt. That can take up to 480. The moment I split it in half, these belts are good enough, because half of 300 is 150. Mark 2 won't quite do it, but a Mark 3 to start with. So you split it in half. Your Mark 4 belt can become 2 Mark 3 belts, which are fully saturated. You go along your thing. You put your coal in, and I chose to split this in half and have it go into 2 stages on this side, so that I could use lower level belts sooner. In here I have a Mark 3 belt that needs to carry 150 coal per minute. You divide it in half for each of the machines, that is 75 coal per minute. Mark 2 belts can hold way more than that. 75 is less than 120. In fact, before very long, I'll be able to have a Mark 1 belt. So I have 75 coal, goes into here, that's 15. 15 away from 75 is 70, 60. So now a Mark 1 belt would work. I tend to put belts slightly more high level belts than I need, so I've got a Mark 2 belt running all the way along this edge to make sure this stays full. But once it saturates, like I said with the storages in the extra earlier video, it'll run. So now I've got a Mark 3 belt feeding 2 Mark 2 belts, and those are split off to feed each side. There's the same down the other side, and I started to make this into a nice looking building, and I started to put some lights in it in places because I've got lights later, and I put some windows in so you could see in from the outside. And when they allowed it, I can now zoom and clip these things together so you can place stuff that interferes with other buildings, which is quite nice. That means that from in here I can neatly wire this all up with this little line of things inside. I can put the odd light in here so that I can see. So even if I turn my flashlight off, I've got a yellow light here to show that it's all on. This light is wired into that cable, and that goes down to here as part of this. And that is a light control panel, so I can turn the light on and off and change what colour it is and everything from here, so I don't have to get up and fiddle with those lights, and some types of lights don't have a control panel. So that light control panel is connected to that, that's connected to that, that's the main power outlet, which goes out here and then connects this little power plant to the rest of the grid. If I disconnect it, I can show you that inside this power plant, I've got more than one power connection. Okay, that didn't do what I expected. It's still connected to the main network, so I've got it wired up. Anyway, I was going to tell you about overclocking. Overclocking works by, later on you get this technology that allows you to build power shards. Power shards allow you to insert them into a machine and turn up the speed at which the machine works. This needs you to build a power shard for each level of machine you want, so 50% costs you 1 power shard, 200% costs you 2, and 250% costs you 3. I need to get 300 parts per minute out of this machine, which meant that I needed 3 power shards. Then that'll run at 300 per minute, and it uses 52 megawatts of power at the moment for a Mark II miner. If we look, that is way more than the default. You would usually use 12. So you burn a lot more power to make sand or stuff. Now that I have it, I could upgrade this to a Mark III miner. In fact, I probably should upgrade it to a Mark III miner, because although a Mark III miner would use 30 power by default, I'm not going to need to overclock it as much. It would probably be more efficient. Because the Mark III miner would produce twice what the Mark I miner does, which is 240 per minute, so I'd only need a little bit of overclocking to make it 300, but that's what it is. So as you go through the technology, you can come back and overclock things more and more and more to upgrade your power supply in other factories. But I have now moved on beyond coal power onto fuel power, which you get from oil and things, and I will show you that another time. But that has covered how I built my base, how I built my coal power plant. If I put my electronic jetpack on, I can float up and show you this building that I mostly built. You can see inside through the windows. I tried to make it a little bit nice. It's not particularly nice. When I built 2 or 3 of these other smaller ones at the start, they're all built the same way as that first one I showed. And I started building things on little platforms, connecting up with all the coal things that are around here, linking them all in, and there's loads of coal around here as you can see, and they've added more recently. On the map you can check, there's lots of coal. Even before the recent update, when you ping, you get the coal mines displayed. So So I've got another normal purity coal mine I could tap here, and I've got lots more space for water down here, so I could produce a lot more coal power. And I might do that at some point in the near future, because coal power is quite easy. If you need to bootstrap it, there's not a lot of production. You've got a miner and some water pumps, and then it works. Fantastic. That's how I started making my coal power. And overall down here I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 plus the 20 power plants there. 16 plus 20 is 32? 36, sorry. Coal power plants, they're all running at normal rate and they all make 75. So that's 75 times 36. It's 2,700 megawatts of power. That is way more than I could make by using the biomass burners. It's also enough that I've got plenty in here to make stuff for all these things. So overall this area makes a lot of excess power. And I will touch on in a future video what these are. Later on you get batteries. I'll explain how they work as part of the overpowering video. So, I hope you found that interesting. Next time we will look at my other large factory. So that is the crystal factory up there. Crystal factory will become part of a future video. I will show you that in a video's time. But this is the power plant we've gone over, and the power plant is what allowed me to power all these other factories. Okay, I will make my way back to my base using the hypertube network that I have strung together. And once we're back at the base, we can go through how I made that second factory near my starting area that makes the modular frames. I can't remember if modular frames came before or after this. I think they may have come before after this, because to make that big factory needed quite a lot of power, and I needed to come here and get the power to do it. Although you do use modular frames to make coal power plants. I can't get my construction manual to show. And then in a future video, as I say, we'll go into here. This was another manually built video plant without any zooping. So that was all clicking together to build my crystal oscillator plant. And crystal oscillators are another big step in the game. Take quite a lot to get going. They're a bit of a faff. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've got any comments on what I've said or how I've done these videos, please let me know. And then next time we will look around this factory, which is the one that makes my reinforced frames. And I altered it to make myself some ammunition later because it shared a lot of the same things. So, see the next video to find out how to make modular frames. Thank you, and bye for now.